not bow to Washington's pressure. Amidst this tit-for-tat trade war, we decode what this could mean for the world. U.S. plans to end work visas, international students under threat. U.S. Congress seeks to abolish the optional practical training option that allows students pursuing STEM degrees to stay in the U.S. for 3 years after their course ends. So what will be the impact on Indian students? We decode for you. In a big win for India, U.S. rejects 2611 terror-accused plea. U.S. Supreme Court rejects Tawud Rana's plea seeking stay on extradition. NIA now to try the terror-accused Tawud Rana in Delhi soon. Dubai Crown Prince's 2-day India visit kickstarts. India and the UAE are set to elevate their ties to the next level. Sheikh Hamdan meets Prime Minister Modi and External Affairs Minister Dr. Jaishankar. And they are no longer extinct. Dire wolves howl again after 12,000 years. Dire wolves return as the world's first de-extinct animals. The Trump tariff storm has really shaken the world, taken it by a storm quite literally. There is economic uncertainty everywhere, and as the new battle looms, this time between the world's two largest economies, we ask that what could be the future? China has labeled Trump's latest tariff threat as blackmail, vowing to end and fight to end as tensions escalate towards what could possibly become the most destructive trade war in history. President Trump's threat to impose a staggering 50% tariff could probably push levies upwards of 100%. How will this cripple industries is the big question, and that's really sent shockwaves through global markets. But China isn't backing down. Meanwhile, within Trump's own ranks, cracks are now forming. Tech mogul Elon Musk has clashed with trade advisor Peter Navarro, calling for zero tariffs with Europe as the Dow plunged over 5% yesterday. It was the biggest drop since the pandemic. Of course, now today the Dow futures seem to be looking up, but the story is far from over because the markets may tumble again, given the fact that uncertainty and questions still remain. We ask the question, who will blink first in this high-stakes showdown? And before I get in my guest this evening, I want to put out those big questions that we always ask on India Global. First up on the show today is will a divided team force Donald Trump to climb down on tariffs? Why? Because Elon Musk is clashing with Peter Navarro. The second key question I'm going to ask our guest this evening is who will be the worst hit by these high tariffs? He slashed them across the board, but who could really be the hardest hit? Next up, are Trump's tariffs actually focused primarily on China and then everybody else is just collateral damage? The next question, how will India be impacted on all of this? We recovered from the meltdown that happened yesterday, but what's the way forward? And why have markets calmed after yesterday's meltdown? Is there something that markets know that we need to watch out for? That's the question that I'm going to first up put forward to Radhika Gupta, who's the MD and CEO of Edelweiss Mutual Fund, joining me on the show, along with Curtis S., who is from the Milken Institute as well. But, you know, Radhika, let me start with you. Thanks so much, first of all, both of you, for joining me today on India Global. Radhika, let me start with you. Markets have looked up after the carnage that happened yesterday. I want to ask you, as someone who understands this like the back of your palm, what do you think has been the reason for the change in the sentiment between yesterday and today?
So I won't label today's move as a directional change in sentiment. I still think we live in very uncertain times, and in times like this, what you see in India's equity market is it reacts to U.S. futures and the movement overnight. So there's a little bit of calm that emerged overnight. All Asian markets opened positive, and so did ours. But I think if you're asking me, is the environment of uncertainty over? I don't think the environment of uncertainty is over. In fact, we have a potential major event, as you mentioned in your headlines, tonight with China's supposed 104% tariff or whatever that will be. So until we get clarity on what tariffs, how much tariffs, because there have been threats, there have been impositions, there have been rollbacks, there have been more tariffs. I think the environment of uncertainty in India is going to loom. There have been some positive beliefs and statements. One, that India is going to be less impacted than other countries like Vietnam or China. The second is our foreign minister talked about a potential bilateral trade deal, and India's talked about dialogue rather than retaliation. So some
Yes.
positive news coming in, but is that enough? I don't think so.
Yeah, indeed. And later on in the show, Pradhika, I'm also going to get Alicia later on, who's the chief economist for Asia Pacific at the French Investment Bank and Actisis. But Pradhika, the other thing you said, that there is some positive indicators, though the sentiment remains negative. But the question I want to ask you is that while these trade headwinds remain, there is a very strong position that has come from Team Trump, which is that they aren't going to back down. Those tariffs stay, and we are talking on the eve of when those tariffs are actually going to kick in. So what do you think could be the outcome tomorrow, or what is it that we should brace ourselves for tomorrow?
I think the market, I mean, what happened overnight was very surprising. And I think it's very hard for the market to brace itself for an outcome. I keep saying these are unprecedented circumstances. The rules of globalization and global trade are being written. And, if history is any measure, the last time the US imposed tariffs like this, the last two times, it led to major recessions or depressions. Now, I don't want to sound alarm bells. But these are unprecedented times in the history of global trade. So I think markets are going to play it by ear. There are some countries like the European Union who are negotiating for zero tariffs, and I think that will calm the situation down. But we haven't seen a Chinese reaction today. So I think markets will just have to play it by ear.
Indeed. And Curtis, you're the former US ambassador to the Asian Development Bank. Explain to me the fact that China is actually taking a very hardened position against Donald Trump in this. How do you think this could pan out? Are we now set for a trade war between the largest and the second largest economy?
No one in this world wants a trade war. The reality is both President Trump and President Xi Jinping are really playing to a domestic audience. They each need to think through, how do they come across? How do they look stronger? What is that face-saving way out? I think the reality, when I look across the region, one of the challenges will be, of course, each country's reaction to these tariffs. And so right now I happen to be in Southeast Asia, in Thailand, which is higher up on that list of tariffs being imposed by the United States. But the fear is less about tariffs just on Thailand. The fear is what happens to China's excess, in a way, excess exports. If the US, if Europe close themselves to these less expensive Chinese products, will they be shipped out across Southeast Asia with consequences for domestic manufacturers in Thailand and across the region? For many people that I deal with in the region, that is the worry. So it's not just they're worried about China's reaction back to the US. Ultimately, these countries are big enough, they will survive. But who will suffer in the interim period? That is the big issue. And I think in some of your earlier questions, you talked about collateral damage. Will the collateral damage be smaller nations, companies in smaller nations? And I think that is the real concern. For the United States and China, ultimately, as in the past, they will work something out. But who will be hurt in the interim period?
That's an important question. And Radhika, you want to weigh in there that, a lot of Indian domestic industries are also very worried about it, that, China may go ahead and dump a lot of its goods in India, as Curtis was pointing out, because other trade opportunities may shut and they would just use India as that dumping ground.
I think there are two parts to this. As Curtis said, there's a dumping angle from China, particularly vulnerable industries like steel, for instance. An industry like cement is less vulnerable because it's largely a domestic industry. Steel is a very vulnerable industry. And I think to this extent, this is time for, people here also to buckle up and think of incentives and what we do about our exporters, what we're going to go out and do for our exporters. Again, India is a large country. The contra to this is, if you compare India to the rest of the world, if you compare India to a country like Vietnam, for instance, Cambodia, for instance, one, the tariff levels are in absolute lower. Secondly, our largest two export industries are IT services and pharma, which for now, let me say for now, have been left reasonably insulated. And if you look at the remaining amount of export impact that India is hit by, it's not very, very large. We also share very good relations with the United States. Prime Minister Modi and Trump are, reasonably friendly. I think Trump has alluded to that in multiple comments about India. So there's hope that, we'll be able to work something out. But it's really time for us as a nation to buckle up and see how we'll support our exporters in reaction to this potential China dumping.
Indeed. Curtis, you want to comment there? The fact that India is relatively insulated or relatively in a better position as compared to Vietnam. I think Vietnam is one country that maybe the world needs to talk more about, given what it's really facing right now.
There's an interesting point in all of this, which is that notion: have countries benefited from being shut off? I think those in the United States, those in India will know best how protected are our industries, how protected is our agriculture, is our automotive industries. So there is a real point about tariffs that President Trump has. But a lot of folks in the past, of course, been on what they call non-tariff barriers to trade. What are the things that a US or an India or a China does that where they say, actually, we have no tariffs? But the reality is that American or Indian or Chinese businesses will know how difficult it is to get goods into another nation because of what are known as non-tariff barriers. So I think beyond this, hopefully at some point over this year, trade fight, people will address the very real barriers that trade exists, tariff and otherwise, and how to, again, countries preserve things that are really in their national interest, to have a domestic food industry or a national security industry, but address these continuing persistent challenges to free and open trade.
Indeed. Very quickly, Radhika, I want to ask you this, that if there's one advice that you would give, given the volatility in the markets, what would that be?
I think the advice to investors is not to take extreme reactions into panic. The other advice, and these are uncertain times, is not to look for immediate answers. So, typically in market corrections like this, investors are looking to say, is this about to end? Is this the bottom? I mean, everywhere I'm traveling, people are asking, is this the bottom? Should I buy? And I would again repeat what I've been saying. These are uncertain times. It's very hard for anyone to say, is this a bottom? Are the valuations cheaper than they were 6 months ago? Yes, they are. But do you expect a recovery in 3 months? No. So sometimes the best action is inaction. It's a little bit of calm. Let the situation play out. I think, India has twin challenges between tariffs and our own domestic slowdown. And let the next couple of months, work themselves out. And then take any action. So, don't look for immediate answers.
No action is the only action that we should actually be taking.
No action is the best action.
Okay, on that note, I have to take a break. I continue this conversation on the other side because that's how the only way we can find answers to this uncertainty. Stay with us.
Few of us ever look after our ears as much as we should, even when hearing loss can interfere with everything that makes us, us. Relationships, passions, independence. But you can keep living the life you love. All the laughing, dancing, and connecting. When you personalize your hearing care with Hidden Hearing, discover how it's possible to keep being you. Hidden Hearing. Your hearing is our expertise.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000, whether it's for home improvements, new appliances, a car, or for some of life's big moments. So even if you've had problems with credit before, Evlo looks beyond your credit score and always takes a case-by-case approach. Visit evlo.co.uk to get your conditional decision in minutes. Evlo, your future in your hands.
This poor creature is a lion, trapped in a cold, bare cage, alone. Terribly malnourished, just skin and bone. How can anyone simply leave a lion to rot and die? Right now, there are thousands of big cats suffering the same torment, languishing in cruel cages, neglected, abandoned, left to die. Will you help Four Paws free big cats suffering around the world right now? Please call 0800 035 7798 Text RESCUE to 70544 or go online and give just £3 a month. Help Four Paws cut the bars and rescue these cats from their prisons. Help us take them to our sanctuaries where they can begin to recover. You'll be setting big cats free from pain and protecting them from cruelty, letting them see the blue sky above and breathe the clean, fresh air of freedom for the first time. But they are the lucky ones. Please call 0800 035 7798. Text RESCUE to 70544 to give £3 a month via your mobile phone. Because if no one cuts the bars and frees these big cats, they will die trapped and alone.
With Post Office Over 50s life cover, enjoy peace of mind knowing your family will receive a guaranteed payout when you're gone. UK resident 50 to 80, you're guaranteed acceptance. No health checks and from just £1.15 a week. Plus free 24/7 GP access with the health and wellbeing benefit. Purchase and receive a £125 gift card for amazon.co.uk, Tesco or M&S. Call Post Office on 0800 171 2211.
As promised, I have important voices to decode what could be the way forward, what can India do, the bilateral treaty, the talks that are currently on, will that ensure that India remains insulated or at least is able to cushion some of the impact from this uncertainty? Let me now get in Alicia Garcia Herrero, who's joining me to talk more about what could be the way forward. She's joining me from Paris. She's the Chief Economist for Asia Pacific at the French investment bank Natixis. Alicia, good to have you on the show. And let me start by asking you the fact that, right now, as I said, and I started the show as well with the fact that we are talking on the eve of when those tariffs will actually kick in. You want to weigh in on the fact that what is it that we should prepare ourselves for, or what is it that the world should prepare itself for?
Well, I mean, tariffs on China are coming on the 9th, but there may be negotiations with other countries. So what we really know is that China will basically face humongously high tariffs that will not allow China to export to the US directly. Other channels like Vietnam, which is extremely important for China, with around 600 billion in a trade surplus with the US, much of which around 60% is Chinese related, might open up if negotiations between Vietnam and the US come to fruit. But this is not yet sure. Actually, it's still unlikely because we've not seen major actions yet being taken by the Vietnamese government.
Indeed, Vietnam is one aspect of it. But Curtis, let me ask you on one interesting development that's taken place, which is the fact that within the Team Trump, there is difference of opinion as to what these trade tariffs are meant to accomplish. Do you think that gives you hope that maybe some of this could actually unwind sooner than we think?
You know, it's really unclear. I mean, the reality is when we think about what is going on in the Trump administration, there is one decider. It's the president. And the reality, in many ways, he's driving this global agenda. And remember, I think he's only been in, 70, 75 days or so. But very clearly, there is some disagreement between, almost like the more traditional people, probably that study the same economics that you and I study, and others who are saying, well, is this a sea change and a necessary sea change to address persistent deficits between nations? It's also fascinating that we always focus, of course, on the goods, the trade in goods trade deficits. The reality is the United States has a services surplus with many nations around the world, and overall, you add it all up, the U.S. has a services surplus. So, the world of trade is changing, but still we're looking at things through these old prisms of the goods trade deficit. But very clearly, countries are already trying to work around things that have been imposed in the past. As you just noted,
Yes.
Chinese companies are exporting now via Vietnam. And now what will Vietnam do when they realize part of one reason that this is happening to them and why they were ranked so high on that list is because of the use of that nation by Chinese companies to, again, send products to the U.S. Where will those products go if they cannot go to the U.S. or Europe from Vietnam? Those are the key questions I think all these other countries are trying to think through.
Need to find answers to, yes. And Alicia, let me ask you this. You know, you mentioned Vietnam, you mentioned some of the other Asian economies. They suffered their worst yesterday since the Asian crisis. I have to ask you this, that, you know, what do you think that they could do to be able to find some sort of a balance between what Trump's demands are and their own trade concerns?
So you use the right word, Gaurie, trade balance. So this is what Trump wants. He wants a balanced trade between any nation in the world and the US. This is very difficult, in some degrees impossible to reach. And also because if the US were to have a fully balanced trade, it would not import capital to finance its trade deficit. So there's a lot of things that he might not like eventually from a balanced trade with every country in the world. But because so far this is the objective, Asian nations need to try to balance its trade. I think if they can't, which many will not, Vietnam is the best example. I think they need to open their markets to to US companies. So in other words, market access.
Is that what it is, Curtis? So simple, 2 words, market access. The world is going round and round and not able to understand?
You know, certainly that's clearly a key part of it. And again, as I said earlier, I think in India and the US, in whatever nation, we in those countries know best how open our markets are, how expensive that American car is or how expensive that American phone is. We ourselves know the reality of the situation when we try and buy products or services from elsewhere. But I think one solution, and I think we're even seeing it out, I think earlier you talked about the meeting between the leadership of, say, the UAE and India, is will there be efforts to push for greater than what we call South-South cooperation? And part of that will include, will countries like China and others encourage domestic consumption versus driving their economies through exports? So again, I think the reality is just not the US that needs to evolve. So when we look at all these countries around the world and how they have grown in this generally very peaceful times, how do they need to evolve, given that this has been now the reaction from the US to the present situation?
Okay, then Alicia, let me ask you the one word that everybody wants an answer to. And I think many people believe that it's actually just the China factor. Everything else is just collateral damage. These Liberation Day tariffs are all about countering China when it comes to Donald Trump.
It is the main target. It is very clear by now. The fact that China retaliated nobody else did. Now Europe is announcing 25% tariffs, so Europe might retaliate at nearly the same level. We'll see what happens. If Trump does the same thing with Europe as he did with China, an additional 50% tariffs, maybe I will say China is not targeted. But so far, I feel China is the target.
Curtis, you want to come in there, sir? That this is just about countering China, and Vietnam and every other country is because of that extension.
You know, clearly a lot of this is about China, but it isn't just about China. And again, as we think about trade flows, the reality is China has grown wealthy through the present system. Now that system is under threat. How will China react? That is a key question I think everyone is figuring out. And remember, how we began, we talked about each of these presidents are playing to a domestic audience. The reality
you
is
mentioned this is not about China. I'm running out of time. I have a question to ask you, which is that if you say this is not just, about a simple trade war, explain to me, or, this is a scenario that some people believe is possible, which is that if, both sides have hardened their positions, if China is able to get more of US's trading partners on its side, would that then force Donald Trump to back down? Let's say the EU comes on its side, Japan comes on its side.
My gut is that won't happen. And the reality, whenever I'm on your and other shows in India, I'm really the optimist, and maybe always the outlier optimist. But I think this can ultimately lead to some positive change in our situation. I just came back from Hong Kong, our first Milken event in Korea. I was just in Saudi Arabia. All of them suffer from challenging headlines. But I would say to people, whether it's China or the US or India, visit those places and see firsthand what is going on and the reality that businesses and everyday consumers face. And hopefully that will contribute to countries, to companies coming together to move things forward. And hopefully keeping this, not just a trade war, but keeping it to a more peaceful situation. I think Donald Trump, maybe it's fake news, once said, I don't like war, but maybe trade war, there's a method to all this madness. But let's hope this will lead to positive change.
I do hope that there is some method to that madness, and I think that's the only optimistic note I'm going to end this on. Curtis and Alicia, thank you so much for joining me on India Global today. And viewers, bottom line really is that tariff announcements is, well, classic Trump playbook, where geopolitics and economics go hand in hand. The division in Team Trump shows that the unsustainability of these high tariffs is known to those in the system as well. But these will probably mark the beginning of trade talks. 50 nations, no less, who want to speak with Donald Trump to cut better deals. And this is exactly what President Trump wants, or at least that's what his electorate wants. More favorable trade deals for America. But the risk here is that if China and a few other large trading blocs like the European Union do come together for a hard bargaining against these tariffs, will that change things? And I guess that's the unpredictability, which is really the real turmoil in global trade right now. And on that note, I'm going to slip into a break, come back with more stories on the other side. Stay with us.
No child should suffer the torture of trachoma. But so many are in pain right now. Nananga's lashes have turned inwards. They rip and tear away at his eyes. Pamelo's sight could be gone forever. He's just 3 years old. Kofanga screams for his mother. His eyes are so infected that he can't even see her. For so many children in the world's poorest countries, trachoma is torture. It's a painful infection often spread by flies, and it's destroying children's eyesight. But it could be stopped if you help today. By calling 0800 038 4926 and giving £1 a week to Sightsavers, you can help make sure children get the treatment they desperately need. You'll help us bring them the medicines and the care that can treat infections. And that means you'll be helping to save children from the torture of trachoma and a life of blindness. Please help us reach them. Call 0800 038 4926. Text C13 to 82727 or go online and give just £1 a week now. Because we need you to help save the sight of children like Nananga. We need you to help save them from the torture of trachoma.
In today's interconnected world, India's voice is more crucial than ever. When India speaks, the world listens. At NDTV World, we are that voice, bringing you intelligent and insightful news from India and beyond. From geopolitics and diplomacy to economic shifts, migrations, tech disruptions, and the stories of our diaspora. We cover the news that shapes our global future. NDTV World, your new home for global news, is here.
One of the worst earthquakes hit Thailand recently, and the tragedy is still unfolding. You can see some sniffer dogs here. Authorities have told me that they had located some vital signs, but they have not been able to pull anyone out. Question as to how did the 4 Chinese nationals manage to get inside such a highly fortified area. They managed to get in. They were successful in getting some 32 documents that established that Chinese connection to this site. It's also about a larger conspiracy that could be at hand. Whether the Chinese materials were substandard, all of that will have to be investigated.
A storm is brewing over the future of thousands of international STEM students in the US. A new bill has been introduced in the Congress that threatens to eliminate the OPT, or the Optional Practical Training Program. It is a lifeline that allows international graduates to work in the US for up to 3 years after they complete their studies in the STEM category, that is science, technology, engineering and math. This move comes amidst rising anti-immigrant policies that are being echoed by the Trump administration's aggressive stance on immigration. While previous attempts to scrap OPT failed, this time there's fear. It's palpable among students, especially those from India that make up about a third of the 300,000 international students in the US. Conversations once dominated by coding boot camps are now being replaced with legal webinars and immigration forums. That's how much the uncertainty is. It's overwhelming. US universities being major economic contributors, the bill could cost billions, and more importantly, it risks displacing top global talent. Now, what does this mean? We want to decode this for all our students who may be looking to go there. And before that, let me quickly now put forth the big questions that I will now raise and hopefully try and find answers to. First up, why is Trump really targeting legal immigrants? It was a crackdown that started against illegal immigrants. The next question, will this hit the US as a premium destination for international students? And will this then hit the economy as well? The next question, will targeting STEM students, that is science, technology, engineering and math students, actually hurt the US economy significantly? The last question, what options are really left for F1 visa holders if they do not have OPT, that is the optional practical training? They will have to go back the moment their course ends. What are their options right now? Let's get into Sudhanshu Kaushik, who is Executive Director of the North American Association of Indian Students, joining me to talk more on this. Sudhanshu, good to have you on the broadcast. Let me start by asking you, how significant are the fears right now in the F1 student category, especially for the STEM students?
Hi, Gaurie. Thanks for having me. Look, it's not just STEM students. I know that you're talking about the OPT legislation that was introduced in Congress, which has its merits, doesn't have its merits, and it's not likely to pass. The fear is among F1 students. Again, you know, the U.S. issues 400,000 F1 visas every single year. Almost half are given to Indian students. So proportionately, anything that happens legislatively within the international student demographic will proportionally affect Indian students. So obviously there is a fear of what's going to happen, but it's here. I don't know if you saw, but just yesterday, over 150 students have been deported from the United States. Their visas, their F1 visas have been revoked, and about 50 to 60 of them, proportionately, are Indians.
Indeed.
That they've had.
Sudhanshu, which brings me to ask that the whole campaign was about illegals, right? They were called illegals. It was just about illegal aliens. Where exactly did highly educated students come into the middle of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is not the opportunity to say, oh, we told you so. I'm from Alabama, so I understood that rhetoric. I've heard it my entire life growing up. And I've said this before, is when someone attacks you, they don't ask your nationality or if you're college educated or graduated. They don't ask you your visa status. You're different to them. And I think this is the same sort of rhetoric when it came to immigration, is just putting everyone under one gambit. And I just don't understand. You know, I was told that President Trump is a deal maker. He makes good business deals. How is this a good business deal when over $200 billion are at risk because Indian students, you know, spend that much here in the United States on higher education, and putting fear in them, telling them that you might or might not have a future here, you might or might not even be able to get your degree here. I've heard a lot, Gaurie, about how, you know, this isn't specifically for all international students or STEM students. A lot of my STEM friends are saying that, hey, you know, we're safe. They want us. This legislation.
Are you saying nobody's safe? Are you saying no international students are safe right now in the US because of the uncertainty around visa concerns and the fact that they may be sent back?
It's not visa concerns. It's the freedom of speech. It's the freedom of academic thought. It's the ability to have the same alienable rights that the Constitution decrees, the U.S. Constitution on any citizen, but also anyone that is on U.S. territory. Those have been at risk. I mean, again, the 150 deportees, the F1 students that were sent back, these students, look, people are saying that, oh, they were taking part in protests, but what's that thin line? I mean, this is unprecedented, right? What's the thin line between criticizing the U.S. government on the tariff policies that now U.S. consulates and also security officials are checking social media if you've said anything or not, and taking part in a protest against, a genocide?
So state resources are being spent on going through people or mining people's or students' social media accounts. I want to ask you this, that what are the legal options for F1 students or students who are looking at a very uncertain future right now in the US?
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm not a lawyer. We do give pro bono legal advice as NAAIS. What we're telling people, and there are some really good organizations, the ACLU, people that are actually fighting these cases on an individual one-to-one basis to, set a precedent. But right now, it seems the administration has won, for right now at least, that, these people are being deported, that, your visa is not a right. It is, something that the United States gives you, and what they see fit, they can do with it. So I think that right now it's too soon to be able to tell. What I'm worried about, Gaurie, are the people, for example, the Indian students who spent hundreds of thousands of dollars, took loans out, and might not be able to graduate. Those people that were about to fight their dissertation but had to leave midway or self-deport. What happens to their 7 years of academic career life that they've spent? It's a lot of lives being disrupted. And the biggest fear, Gaurie, is about the amount of Indian students that come every single year.
Indeed.
It was a thriving business for Indians and the U.S. colleges. That's up for disruption.
Absolutely, Sudhanshu. Thank you so much for joining me today on a story that impacts, as you rightly said, hundreds of thousands of students. And bottom line, viewers, really is that Donald Trump's crackdown on illegal immigrants has taken a very dangerous turn. By targeting students with F1 visa, Trump's crackdown will have negative repercussions for the US economy as well, not just the large universities, but also because STEM or science, technology, engineering and math as a category are areas where the average American student actually fares very poorly compared to OECD. Take just maths, for instance. American students fare 28th out of the 37 OECD countries. So they need these foreign students, at least the highly educated ones, like from India, to power their own economy. It's not for nothing that most tech companies in the US, have prominent Indian tech talent, because the US economy needs it to grow and to prosper. And cutting that link is really going to cost the US economy very dearly. On that note, moving on to an Indian entrepreneur's nightmare that unfolded at Alaska's Anchorage airport. Shruti Chaturvedi, founder of India Action Project, was detained for 8 hours. She was stripped of her warm clothes, subjected to a male officer's physical check and questioned by the FBI, all over a suspicious power bank. What is happening in the US? They're now denying basic rights, no restroom, no phone call, forced to miss her flight. Chaturvedi shared all of this on social media, and she's now joining me to talk more about her agony as to what really happened. Shruti, thank you for joining me to take out time to speak to me on India Global. Let me start by asking you, I was seeing through your account, and by all accounts, it's very, very shocking. Could you tell us what really happened there?
Yes. This was Anchorage Airport in Alaska, and we had our flights to our respective countries wherever we were heading to. It was me and my friends. One of our friends, unka flight tha, who had gone to drop, and I had my flight in the next 4 or 5 hours. So I'd gone to drop her, and she went inside first. And then I get a call from her. I was outside at the Starbucks just having my coffee, and I got a call from her saying that they've seized her passport, apparently because they detected a power bank in the bag. The next message the next call that I got from her was that there was an anti-bomb squad that was being called, and she was being detained, and that was the last message. And then they just took away her phone, so I could not reach her. So of course I started calling a few friends in India on what to do in a thing like this. So they just somebody advised me, like, go talk to the police there and ask what's the status. I went to the Anchorage police station at the airport to ask that this is the last message I received from my friend, and I want to know where she is. And they said, oh, are you her friend? And I said yes. and they were like, oh, because of the nature of the crime, we are also detaining you. And this was the only information I was given. And they just took away my phone, they took away my jacket, they checked me, and then they said, we are also detaining you. And this was the airport police station, and they took me to a room in the airport, and that's where I was kept for like 8 hours.
Shruti, you've also mentioned in your social media post that you were searched by a male officer. What happened?
Yes, that is correct. They did not have a female officer, and while they were taking my jacket and everything, is when the male officer checked me, and this was on camera because they're supposed to do this with the camera on. And they did not even give me an option to say that I do not want to be checked by a male officer. They just said that I have the camera on and I'm going to check you, and then they just started checking.
Those are very serious allegations that you're making. Did they tell you why they treated you the way they did? And did they tell you why you were subjected to this kind of a treatment?
When I went to ask why my friend was detained, they did not tell me anything. In fact, they just detained me, saying that the crime is very serious, and because of the seriousness of the crime, they're also detaining anybody who was traveling together. And that's the reason why my friend Shilpa was also detained, and I was also detained. And they did not give us a reason till like the FBI officer came to the room where we were kept, like, and we were all kept like in different rooms. So I did not know where my friend was. My friend did not know where I was, and there was another third friend back at the Airbnb, and she had no clue where all of us were. And they kept us in different rooms. And when the FBI officer came, is when the officer said that they found something suspicious in her bag. Not They did not even tell us that it was the power bank. They said they have found something suspicious, and I will go further ahead to also share that they found the power bank. They took it in front of her from her bag, and somebody at the airport security put the power bank in the luggage bag, in the cabin luggage bag, with a duct tape. And that's the picture that they took and gave it to the FBI, saying that she was hiding the bank with the duct tape, which was pure nonsense, because she had no reason to do that. And in fact, our friend, she kept saying that you've done that in front of my eyes. Why are you fabricating a false evidence? And in fact, that's the image that has been given to the FBI, with the power bank with a duct tape on. And that is something that they said that this is, they even said that the object was something that could detonate. So yeah, that was what they told us.
And how did they let you go? Did they accept the blunder that they had made?
No, they did not say that they committed a mistake. It took at least 7-8 hours. There were multiple rounds of questioning by the FBI, where they kept coming and asking the same questions again. I think they were asking me the questions, they were asking my friend the questions. They even asked like why we were there, which car rental company we rented the car from. Multiple questions here and there. And that's it. Like, in fact, when I was in detention, I told them if they can just make a phone call to my father and just inform him that I'm here, because they took my phone away without any notice. So I could not even inform anybody that I was like in detention for 8 hours. And I told them if you can make a phone call, which they did not. They let us, I remember just passing out, and when one officer came and he was like, okay, we're letting you go because we could not find anything. And that was it. But despite all of this, they've not even returned the luggage bag yet. They just removed all the things from the luggage bag and gave a very frivolous duffel bag to carry the luggage in. The luggage bag is still at the Anchorage airport, which they apparently think has a bomb in it because it had a power bank.
Are you planning to press any charges given all that ordeal that you faced?
I don't know if we can press any charges, if there is anything that we can press the charges about. The whole point of writing the post on X, and in fact, in fact, like, it took me, like, I wanted to write it at then and there, but like, in the back of my head, the only thing I wanted to do was leave USA before even trying to share something like this that has happened. So I don't know if I can press any charges or something, but the whole point of writing the post on X was the fact, like, more Indians should know that this is the kind of racial profiling that happens at places like these. And it's very new, because this is not the first time I'm also traveling to the US or from US to anywhere else. But apparently a lot of people, in replies to my post as well, you will see a lot of my friends have also faced this in multiple airports of the United States, and the way they treat people. And like, all we know, for all said and done, we know why this was done, and that had a lot to do with the color of our skin.
Shocking case of racism that you faced, Shruti, and thank you for being brave enough to share that story with me. on India Global. And on that note, I'm going to slip into a break with more on the other side. Stay with us.
This poor creature is a lion trapped in a cold, bare cage, alone. Terribly malnourished, just skin and bone. How can anyone simply leave a lion to rot and die? Right now, there are thousands of big cats suffering the same torment, languishing in cruel cages, neglected, abandoned, left to die. Will you help Four Paws free big cats suffering around the world right now? Please call 0800 035 7798, text RESCUE to 70544, or go online and give just £3 a month. Help Four Paws cut the bars and rescue these cats from their prisons. Help us take them to our sanctuaries where they can begin to recover. You'll be setting big cats free from pain and protecting them from cruelty, letting them see the blue sky above and breathe the clean, fresh air of freedom for the first time. But they are the lucky ones. Please call 0800 035 7798, text RESCUE to 70544 to give £3 a month via your mobile phone. Because if no one cuts the bars and frees these big cats, they will die trapped and alone.
With Post Office Over 50's life cover, enjoy peace of mind knowing your family will receive a guaranteed payout when you're gone. UK resident 50 to 80, you're guaranteed acceptance. No health checks and from just £1.15 a week. Plus free 24/7 GP access with the health and wellbeing benefit. Purchase and receive a £125 gift card for amazon.co.uk, Tesco or M&S. Call Post Office on 0800 171 2211.
This is an important message for people living with diabetes from people living with diabetes.
When I was experiencing the symptoms of diabetes, I didn't know what was going on.
You go on the internet and it's full of horror stories.
I didn't understand about carbs, I didn't understand about blood glucose levels.
That's why the support I get as a Diabetes UK member is so important.
You can become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. When you do, you'll receive a practical guide specific to your type of diabetes and a copy of Balance magazine 4 times a year. Plus, you'll help support research that could lead to better treatments for all types of diabetes.
As members, we're all working it out together.
Call 0800 144 5410 or go online to become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. Join us now because membership can help you learn to live better with diabetes.
Diplomatic tides are shifting in the Indian subcontinent once again as Bangladesh has sent a new High Commissioner to India. Just days after a key meeting between Prime Minister Modi and Chief Advisor Mohammad Yunus at the BIMSTEC summit in Bangkok. Riaz Hamidullah, a seasoned diplomat with decades of experience, has now landed in the Indian capital. He's a 1995 batch officer of the Bangladesh Foreign Service. His appointment comes after a long vacancy, and his arrival is marking possible signs of a thaw between India and Bangladesh. Now, what does this mean, his arrival? Will the diplomatic strain between India and Bangladesh now be addressed? Let's get in my colleague Mohammad Ghazali to fill us in with those details. Now, Ghazali, this is an important diplomatic assignment, an appointment. It's actually a fresh chapter, one would say, in the bilateral relations between India and Bangladesh.
Oh yes, certainly. And coming in the wake of the meeting, in the backdrop of meeting between Mr. Yunus and Mr. Modi, it certainly shows that both the sides have discussed it, because his appointment happened in Feb. He has only taken charge yesterday on Monday. So that shows that it was in the waiting until they got a final go-ahead from the Indian authorities. And after that meeting, perhaps it appears now that the relations should move towards a positive development, because both the leaders, if you ignore the fact that how his the press secretary of the chief advisor spoke about Sheikh Hasina and how India has assured Bangladesh that Sheikh Hasina will be extradited, or some positive response was given. If you ignore that fact, but both the countries have spoken about that from here now onwards. Prime Minister Modi spoke about that how the border dispute issue needs to be addressed, law and order should be maintained in that particular area, and also any rhetoric which kind of vitiates atmosphere should be avoided, was what the Prime Minister spoke about. And Bangladeshi Chief Advisor Mr. Yunus also spoke about that how since 1971, the War of Liberation, how India has always provided unwavering support to Bangladesh in all its crises. So it appears now with the appointment of this new High Commissioner, somebody who has studied in Aligarh Muslim University here, he knows the region well. He has also served in Sri Lanka as Bangladesh's High Commissioner over there. So somebody who knows the region and has been appointed at a critical juncture when the relations are now going to resume between the two countries. It appears now that both the countries now want to move forward, and it's a positive development in that regard.
All right, we'll wait and watch as to how this pans out between India and Bangladesh. Ghazali, as always, appreciate you joining me on the show. Turning attention now to Ukraine, where the Ukrainian President Zelensky has publicly acknowledged for the first time that his troops are active in Russia's Volgorod region, which borders Ukraine. Zelensky stated that Ukraine is conducting operations in the border areas, called the action absolutely just, noting that the war must return to where it came from. His comments also refer to Russia's Kursk region, where Ukraine retains control of a small area following a massive offensive last year. But Moscow has regained most of that territory. Zelensky has, in fact, minutes ago posted our military captured two Chinese citizens with a purported video of the two who were fighting as part of the Russian army. This took place on Ukrainian territory. In Donetsk, there are documents of these prisoners, bank cards, personal data. That's what he's saying. And he went on to claim having information that there are significantly more such Chinese citizens in Russian units. Now, where is this war headed? The fact that there is now possibility of Ukrainian troops inside Russian territory, the fact that they are now capturing some of these Chinese troops, what does this indicate? Where is the war headed? Siddharth Rajoli, who's a researcher on Russia, joins me. He's working at the ORF. Siddharth, how do you see this development? Because to me, it indicates that the war now looks far from over. Any peace talks that were looking now don't look so promising.
Indeed, yes. This will complicate any kind of peace talks between Russia and Ukraine, especially. But unlike the Kursk incursion that happened last year, this one seems to be like a defensive move to ensure that Russia, who's actually Russian forces which have taken back much of the territories in Kursk, to ensure that troops don't spill over to Sumy region in Ukraine. It's to ensure that it's just to stall the advance of the Russian forces into Ukrainian territory. Zelensky has made this move. But it's also to be understood that Belgorod has been at the forefront of Ukrainian attacks since the invasion began. This region has been subject to artillery and drone strikes. I mean, since March 18th, about 49 drone attacks were conducted on the region. This even including energy strikes. At present, Ukraine has control of Demidovka, 7 kilometers into the Russian border. This also comes in light of Russia's capture of Shuja to ensure that Ukrainian forces are, trying to stall the Russia's advance into Ukraine, and it's also to be understood that the Russian forces, like when Ukraine invaded Kursk last year, Russian forces declared emergency in 3 and 4 regions.
But
So
Siddharth,
one of the regions was Belgorod.
I want to ask about one thing that Zelensky just tweeted, saying that we need to bring the war back to where it started. What does that mean? What's that message that President Zelensky is sending?
I think the message President Zelensky is trying to send that the war started on February 24, 2022, with Russian forces entering Ukraine from 5 axes. One of the axes was from the Sumy region in Ukraine. So the troops crossed in from Belgorod to Ukraine. Presumably, that could be what Zelensky is trying to talk about. And on another note, when on the Chinese soldiers fighting in the Russian armed forces, we have to understand that a lot of troops from various nations have been fighting in the Russian army. They may not necessarily be soldiers, but they may just be
mercenaries.
workers.
They may be mercenaries. There were North Korean soldiers earlier, but the presence of Chinese soldiers does complicate things, doesn't it?
Actually, it's quite difficult. It's not an easy answer because at first we're not certain of their nationality to begin with. The Western sources indicated that more than 12,000 North Korean troops are fighting in Russia, but there was no conclusive satellite evidence of the same as well. So I think the Chinese soldiers, the incident of Chinese soldiers fighting in Ukraine requires a bit more investigation and a bit more time. So far, if you go across Russian media on the recent news, I think there's nothing much reported apart from routine strikes against Belgorod since 18th of March. But then, the media has not reported in Russia that anything significant has happened. Yesterday was the first time President Zelensky reported of something at this level, that the Ukrainian forces were in Belgorod.
And finally, very quickly, it seems that President Trump is preoccupied with tariff right now, and the peace talks with Russia, Ukraine seems to have gone to the back burner. You think so?
Yes, I think this is quite, it has complicated the peace talks, because as far as I remember, last year, before the Kursk incursion happened, there were peace talks scheduled to happen in Qatar on, stalling attacks on energy infrastructure. So I think this will complicate peace talks, but then we have to remember that Zelensky labeled this as a defensive move and not an offensive one. So I think even that also has certain calculation.
All right.
Yeah.
Let's leave it there, Siddharth. Thanks much for joining me to decode that development. And as we wrap things up, well, I have to tell you about Romulus. Well, they were gone for 12,500 years, but now they're back. Whom am I talking about? Romulus and Remus, resurrected from ancient DNA, living proof that extinction isn't permanent. Created by colossal biosciences, these pups are just the beginning. Next up, well, woolly mammoths, totos, even Tasmanian tigers, who knows? While billionaires dream of tiny mammoths, the real question is what happens when we bring the apex predators back? Extinction is no longer permanent. But as I wrap this up, I'm going to ask all of you viewers, are we ready for that reality? Thanks so much for watching this edition of India Global with me.
It feels good knowing that your future's in hand. Evlo can offer you a loan from £1,000 to £15,000, whether it's for home improvements, new appliances, a car, or for some of life's big moments. So even if you've had problems with credit before, Evlo looks beyond your credit score and always takes a case-by-case approach. Visit evlo.co.uk to get your conditional decision in minutes. Evlo, your future in your hands.
Few of us ever look after our ears as much as we should. But when my hearing changed, I didn't want to lose what matters to me. Hidden Hearing understood. It wasn't just about hearing better. It's about living the life I love. Book your free hearing test at one of our 300 clinics nationwide and experience how our personalized care can help you keep being you. Hidden Hearing. Your hearing is our expertise.
At Direct Line, we know that for multi-property landlords, sometimes the tiniest of things can turn into way bigger problems. From niggly contract issues to keeping up with ever-changing legislation. That's why Direct Line's landlord insurance offers a 24/7 legal helpline as standard. Because a call with someone could help to make the hairiest of problems feel that little bit smoother. Search Direct Line Landlord Insurance. We're on it.
We all know animals have feelings. They depend on kindness, just like you and me. So imagine how they feel when they're beaten, starved, and unloved. Every minute, the RSPCA is called on to save animals in physical agony and mental torment. It's unbearable to see the pain in their eyes. We refuse to give up on them, but to rescue them from a life of fear, we urgently need animal lovers like you to donate today. Please call 0800 121 4260 or text KIND to 84903 to give £2 a month to the RSPCA. Your gift will help fund more life-saving rescues, more emergency treatment, and more gentle rehabilitation. Every month, you'll be helping to keep animals free from pain and sadness so they can find the comfort and joy they deserve. Right now, across the country, thousands are suffering deliberate harm. But together, we can show animals what kindness feels like. Together, we can rescue them. So please, call 0800 121 4260, text KIND to 84903, or visit our website to start your monthly donation today. Thank you.
Grenade attack on a BJP Neta's residence. Claim the accused have links to the Lawrence Bishnoi gang. Well, first up this evening, after sharp reactions and political criticism for his comments over the alleged sexual assault of a woman in Bengaluru, Karnataka Home Minister G. Parameshwara withdrew his remarks and apologized for it, putting an end to the controversy. While reacting to reporters on the alleged sexual assault of a woman in Bengaluru, which was caught on CCTV camera, the Home Minister, while saying that the police will do all they can to protect the citizens, also added that such things happen in big cities. The comment led to sharp reactions after it was played out in the media, and the Home Minister publicly apologized for it, attempting to put an end to the controversy.
ಹಾಗಾಗಿ ನನ್ನ ಹೇಳಿಕೆಯನ್ನು ತಿರುಚಿ ಹೇಳಿರ್ತಕ್ಕಂಥದ್ದು ಆಗಬಾರ್ದು. ಒಂದು ಎರಡನೇದು ಅಂಥದ್ದೇನಾದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಯಾರಿಗಾದರೂ ಭಾರತೀಯ ಜನತಾ ಪಾರ್ಟಿಯವರು ರಾಜಕೀಯ ಮಾಡೋದು ಅವರಿಗೆಲ್ಲ ನಾನು ಹೇಳ್ತಾ ಇರೋದು ಈ ಮಾತನ್ನು. ನಮ್ಮ ಸಹೋದರಿಯರು ತಾಯಂದಿರು ಯಾರಿಗಾದರೂ ಕೂಡ ಈ ನನ್ನ ಹೇಳಿಕೆ ಅಕಸ್ಮಾತ್ ಏನಾದರೂ ಅವರಿಗೆ ಮನಸ್ಸಿಗೆ ನೊಂದಿದ್ದಿದ್ರೆ ನಾನಾಗಿ ವಿಷಾದವನ್ನು ವ್ಯಕ್ತಪಡಿಸ್ತೇನೆ. ಆದರೆ ಅದನ್ನು ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ರೀತಿಯಲ್ಲಿ ಬೇರೆ ಬೇರೆ ಪ್ಲ್ಯಾಟ್ಫಾರ್ಮಿಗೆ ತೊಗೊಂಡೋಗೋ ಅಗತ್ಯ ಇಲ್ಲ.
With regard to Sidguntapalle police station incident of which has happened last week, swift investigation is being done, and we are trying to identify and trace the accused based on verification of various CCTV footages. Several teams have been formed, and more than 300 CCTV camera footages have been analyzed so far. Police are in full action, and DCP Southeast is heading the investigation. Day beat, night beat, and all is being done very regularly. Nakabandi is also being done. We are also monitoring that activity. The senior level police officers are also monitoring especially the night beat system, and also more importantly, what we have started, the Nakabandi system. So the efficiency of the night beat system is also being analyzed with the use of software also.
Well, my colleague Deepak Bopanna, who's been following that case very closely, joins me live. Deepak, on the one side was that controversy over the Home Minister's statements. On the other side, as we heard the Commissioner share details of what they're doing in terms of investigations, this case also a little complex because the women themselves didn't want to come forward to file a complaint, and the police had to take action on the basis of a CCTV footage.
Yes, the latest update that we can bring to our viewers, Avira, is the fact that the police are finding it extremely difficult because the only lead that they have right now is the CCTV footage, which is not very clear. They're using image-enhancing technology to try and identify this individual. About 4 to 5 suspects have been brought in for questioning starting last year. Zeroed in on a couple of them, and very soon there could be a breakthrough, is what I'm learning from my sources in the police department. Now, while all of this, of course, is as far as the investigation is concerned, politics continues, quite aggressively on the matter. We've seen, Mr. G. Parameshwara's controversial statement yesterday and how it blocked from various quarters. Today, his apology as well hasn't gone down too well with the opposition.
Right, we seem to have lost the line with Deepak Bopanna. He was pointing out to the reaction from the opposition to the Home Minister's apology, but that political controversy itself is just an aside. The real focus is on that case, as Deepak was pointing out. We'll try and get the latest on that as and when we get that. But now to a landmark verdict by the apex court that could set the tone for governors to fall in line in opposition-ruled states. That's our special focus this evening. Invoking its inherent powers on constitutional issues, the apex court today cleared 10 bills passed by the Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly, which were withheld by the state governor R.N. Ravi for assent, some for as long as 5 years. A bench of Justices J.B. Pardiwala and Justice R. Mahadevan held that the governor's reservation of 10 bills for president's assent is quote-unquote illegal and liable to be set aside. The bench also set a time frame of